Three cargo ships are on fire in the Persian Gulf right now. Not metaphorically, not as a warning. Three actual commercial vessels, carrying flags from Thailand, Japan, and the Marshall Islands, were struck by unidentified projectiles in the early hours of Wednesday morning, according to the United Kingdom Maritime Trade Operations, the British military agency that monitors commercial shipping across the region. The crew of one of those ships was forced to abandon vessel. And as those fires burned, the number of commercial ships hit since this war began climbed to 14. 14 vessels in 11 days. And the waterway responsible for moving 1/5 of every barrel of oil consumed on this planet is effectively closed. This is day 11 of America's war with Iran. And what happened on Tuesday was not just an escalation. It was a turning point that revealed something deeply alarming about the gap between what Washington has been telling the American people and what is actually unfolding in the Persian Gulf. Let's start with what we know for certain, because the facts are extraordinary enough on their own. On Tuesday, U.S. Central Command published a 34-second video on X showing American forces destroying Iranian naval vessels near the Strait of Hormuz. The caption confirmed that 16 Iranian minelayers had been, in CENTCOM's word, eliminated. 16 ships, gone in a single day of strikes. President Trump announced the action himself on Truth Social, first claiming 10 ships had been destroyed, then CENTCOM revised the number upward to 16. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth joined in, posting that at Trump's direction, American forces had been eliminating inactive minelaying vessels with, and these are his exact words, ruthless precision. The reason those ships were targeted was confirmed to Axios by a senior U.S. official who said the strikes were a preemptive measure based on intelligence about Iran's operational plans. And what those plans were is the detail that should concern every American who drives a car, heats a home, or buys food at a grocery store. Iran had begun laying mines in the Strait of Hormuz. According to two people familiar with U.S. intelligence who spoke to CNN, Iran started placing naval mines in the strait in recent days. The operation is still in an early phase. Only a few dozen mines have been laid so far. But here's the number that stops you cold. Iran still retains upward of 80 to 90% of its small boats and minelayers. That means the 16 ships destroyed on Tuesday represent a fraction of Iran's minelaying capacity. The country has enough remaining vessels to feasibly lay hundreds of additional mines in the waterway. Iran's total stockpile of naval mines, according to CBS News citing multiple U.S. officials, is estimated to range between 2,000 and 6,000 units. These are not simple devices. Iran's arsenal includes sophisticated influence mines, triggered by the magnetic or acoustic signatures of ships passing overhead that can sit silently on the seabed and activate weeks or months after being placed. The Strait of Hormuz is 34 miles wide at its narrowest point. The shipping lanes within it, the actual navigable channels, are only 2 miles wide in each direction. You do not need to fill the entire strait with mines to close it. You need to make any ship's captain, any shipping company, any insurance underwriter look at that channel and decide the risk is not worth it. And that is already happening. Major maritime insurance providers, including North Standard, the London P&I Club, and the American Club, have already warned they are suspending coverage for ships operating in Iranian waters and parts of the Gulf. Without insurance, no commercial vessel moves. The economic logic of a mine threat is that you don't even need to use the mines. You just need to place enough of them that the world believes the channel is dangerous. Now, here's where this story takes a turn that goes beyond the immediate military situation. Because there is a question that has not been answered, a question that naval analysts and former U.S. Navy officers are asking this week with growing alarm. If Iran lays mines in the Strait of Hormuz, who exactly is going to clear them? The answer, based on what the U.S. Navy has done in the months before this war began, is genuinely unsettling. For more than 3 decades, the United States maintained 4 purpose-built Avenger-class minesweepers at its naval base in Bahrain. These were wooden-hulled, fiberglass-coated ships specifically designed for one mission: finding, identifying, and neutralizing naval mines in shallow coastal waters. They carried towed minesweeping gear that could simulate the acoustic and magnetic signatures of larger warships, causing mines to detonate prematurely. They carried remotely operated underwater vehicles capable of cutting mooring lines and physically interacting with mines on the seabed. They were the front line of American mine countermeasure capability in the Persian Gulf for over 30 years. The last of those four ships, the USS Devastator, was decommissioned in September 2025. All four were loaded onto a contracted cargo vessel called the M/V Seaway Hawk and shipped back to the United States. That cargo ship, carrying America's decommissioned mine hunting fleet, arrived in Philadelphia on Tuesday, the exact same Tuesday that Iran reportedly began laying mines in the Strait of Hormuz. Read that again. The ship carrying America's retired minesweepers docked in Philadelphia on the same day Iran started mining the world's most critical energy chokepoint. The Navy's plan, according to U.S. Naval Forces Central Command, is to replace the Avenger-class ships with Independence-class littoral combat ships equipped with mine countermeasure modules. There are three of these vessels currently in the Persian Gulf region. But critics of the LCS program, which has been plagued by cost overruns and reliability problems since the first ships were commissioned in 2008, have a blunt assessment of their usefulness. Carl Schuster, a former U.S. Navy captain and now a defense analyst, told CNN that deploying these ships into the Strait of Hormuz to sweep for mines would be, in his exact words, more of a publicity stunt than anything else. He added that the Navy bureaucracy would employ them to make the design seem useful and to justify their excessive cost. The ships have been so persistently unreliable that critics in the defense community refer to them informally as little crappy ships. These are the vessels now responsible for mine countermeasures in the Persian Gulf. And according to Navy Lookout, an authoritative naval analysis publication, even with the most modern autonomous mine hunting systems available, clearing a dense minefield in the Strait of Hormuz could take weeks or months and could probably only be done after a ceasefire. During that entire period, maritime insurers would almost certainly refuse to cover commercial shipping, meaning the economic effects of a mining operation could persist long after the mines themselves were removed. This is the strategic trap Iran is setting. And on Tuesday, while the U.S. military was sinking 16 Iranian minelayers, Iran demonstrated that it still holds the majority of the pieces needed to complete that trap. While all of this was unfolding, the oil market was behaving in ways that should alarm anyone with a retirement account, a mortgage tied to variable interest rates, or a commute to work. On Tuesday, the price per barrel of crude oil fluctuated between more than $90 and less than $80, swinging back and forth in a series of violent peaks and valleys that reflected the fundamental uncertainty of whether that strait will stay passable. Earlier in the week, crude had briefly touched nearly $120 a barrel, the highest level since Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022. As of early Wednesday, WTI crude was trading at approximately $83, and Brent crude, the global benchmark, was sitting at $87.90. The national average for regular gasoline at the pump has risen more than 50 cents per gallon since this war began less than 2 weeks ago. Producers across the Gulf have already begun halting operations. Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and Bahrain have paused production at some of their largest refineries following drone and missile attacks over the past week. Iraq, the UAE, and Kuwait have suspended oil shipments entirely amid the uncertainty in the strait. According to CNN, nearly 15 million barrels per day of crude production, plus another 4.5 million barrels per day of refined fuels, are now effectively stranded in the Gulf. These producers have no alternative shipping route. The Strait of Hormuz is the only exit. The G7 group of major economies signaled Tuesday that it could move to release emergency oil reserves to try to offset the shortages. But analysts at Rystad Energy have said clearly that even if the war ended today, it would take a minimum of 2 weeks to restore maritime traffic to pre-war levels, and up to 2 months before production itself normalized. The infrastructure damage to Gulf refineries is real, and it does not repair itself overnight. Trump on Tuesday posted that the Strait of Hormuz is going to remain safe, and that the U.S. has a lot of Navy ships there with the best equipment in the world inspecting for mines. He also said he was thinking about taking the Strait of Hormuz over. Those were his words, thinking about taking it over. International legal experts immediately noted that seizing sovereign maritime territory that falls under the jurisdiction of Iran and Oman would constitute a violation of international law. But beyond the legal question, there is a more immediate practical question. If the United States intends to guarantee the safety of commercial shipping through the strait, what exactly is it going to use to find and remove the mines that intelligence says Iran has already started laying? The four ships built specifically to answer that question are now sitting on the Philadelphia waterfront, awaiting disposal. What Tuesday revealed is a conflict that has entered a new and more dangerous phase. The strikes on 16 minelayers were significant. The U.S. military acted on credible intelligence and moved quickly. But the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Air Force General Dan Kane, confirmed that American forces will continue hunting and striking minelaying vessels and mine storage facilities, which means the threat has not been eliminated. It has been reduced temporarily while Iran retains the capacity to regenerate it. Three cargo ships burning in the Gulf right now is the physical evidence of what a partially closed strait looks like. The question of what a fully mined strait looks like for oil markets, for gas prices, for the global economy is the question that nobody in Washington has given a complete and honest answer to. The war is 11 days old. The minesweepers are in Philadelphia, and Iran still has 80% of its minelayers.